Hey gang, Mark LeBlanc welcoming you back to the Alley Cat Workshop. This is the first video in a series that I'm going to put together on how I am rebuilding and improving my workbench. So I've just completed rebuilding the top, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. In other videos, I'll be talking about how I install vices on this, and also how I build some storage systems like drawers and other beneath the bench. Now, why did I get onto this particular journey? The top of the bench, the old one, was made out of MDF. And I noticed when I brought it in here that the MDF was starting to sag in the middle. That's not exactly good. You want to have a nice flat surface to work off, and it wasn't flat anymore. Plus, there were a number of glue stains on the surface, and stains of other stuff, and stains of stains, so this thing looked beat up and it looked like it needed to be changed. So, I looked at a couple of alternatives. Now, before I did that, one thing I looked at is, what do I like about the bench? And the first thing I have to say is that the leg structure, it was something that I liked, and so I decided to keep it. The legs are sturdy, solid. This is a very stable bench. Second thing is, when I moved here, I bought these really nice casters. You see them on the bottom here. The 4 casters will support up to 800 pounds. So they were already installed. Why take them off and install them somewhere else? Frankly, it didn't make any sense. So I decided, let's keep the legs. Let's just focus on the top. I looked at a number of alternatives. First one, let's redo it in MDF. And that certainly would have been a workable solution, but my experience showed that after a while, MDF, well, you do need to replace it. So I wanted to have something that would be more permanent. I do it once, I do it right, it's over. Second option was plywood. A little bit more solid or sturdier than MDF. Kind of has some of the same disadvantages. The other thing too is that plywood is pretty expensive these days. So if I'm going to be spending some money into the top, I want it to last. And then I looked at hardwoods. Hardwoods are out of price. So I needed something that was more economical in order to achieve what I wanted. I ended up choosing 2x6s in Douglas fir, milling them, cutting them to size, gluing them together in order to build my bench top. And it worked out really, really well. So I'm really happy with what this looks like. So, if you want to see how I built this, stick around. I went through the process of an initial glue up 4 times. The first reason as to why I had to go through this process 4 times is that I could only bring back so much lumber in my car in the first place. The second reason is that I wasn't sure this approach was going to work in the first place. So I started off with 3 2x6s, which I cut to rough length. I then used my jointer to establish a reference face and a reference edge. Next, I used my planer to clean up the second face. And finally, the table saw to cut the boards into strips that were 2.5 inch wide by about 1 inch and 3/8 inch high. For each board, I got 2 strips. Alright, now time for some assembly. I used a liberal amount of glue on the faces of my strips. Believe me, this is not the time to be stingy. I then used a process to clamp down the build, starting with some pipe clamps and some cauls to make sure that my pieces were pretty much in line. Sometimes you need a little bit of persuasion. Then more clamps on the ends, and more cauls, And more clamps. And more clamps. And why not clamps on colls? Like I said before, I went through this process 4 times. I did not film one step, which is using a hand plane to clean up the bottom face of each of my sections, so that the glue up you're going to see now would be based on a common reference. I had to do the glue up outside, as the floor of my shop is not level. It's a garage and there's a slight pitch towards a sewer in the middle of the room. The tarp is there to prevent any glue from going on the asphalt. And yep, you guessed it, lots of clamps. I left this whole glue up outside to dry and cure for about an hour. After that hour, I removed the clamps, got the workbench outside. It was now time to get rid of the old top once and for all. And then using sheer strength, I was able to move the bench top right on top of the leg assembly. To be honest, this was actually a lot easier than I had expected. For the next hour or so, I worked on flattening the top with my hand planes. It was good exercise, believe me. Now, I'm not an expert user of hand planes. I do have to say I'm very happy with the end result. I also sanded the top with my orbital sander. I went through the following grits: 80, 150, and 220. The next day, I used my circular saw with a straight edge to cut the ends to final size. All right, so I just finished giving a first coat of finish on the top of the workbench. This product, first time I use it, it's actually really quite impressive. The wood is popping out. It's a nice color, it's a nice hue, but you really look at a good, nice, protective, even coat. So the product, just so you see it, is this guy right here. A monocoat oil for, apparently it's for wooden floors, but honestly this thing's rock solid for what I'm using it now. It's looking great. So tomorrow morning I will put on a second coat and this project will be done. So folks, thanks for joining, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, click the like button. You know the drill, right? So next project, or next phase rather, is to install the vices on, I've got 2 vices to install, and eventually I'll work on the drawers. So thanks for watching, gang. See you soon.